Dr. Berg here. Today we're going to talk about how to strengthen your legs. Now this is not just a general video on to make your legs stronger. This has to do with increasing your longevity. Your legs and the strength and what they can do to support you. It's one of the best indicators to know how long you're going to live because the legs give you a lot of early warning signs on what's going on with more dangerous conditions in your body. So this becomes more relevant the older you are. So if you're over 50, you need to be watching this video. If you're under 50, watch it as well because you want to know how to prevent problems and use the legs as a good way to determine if there's a problem throughout the body. Let's start with number one. There's something called peripheral neuropathy. That's usually in a situation when you have diabetes. And what happens with diabetes is you have this high level of sugar in the bloodstream that destroys the vascular system and then also the nervous system. And this is because high levels of sugar are toxic. Now, the reason why people with diabetes start to get numbness or pain or tingling or burning in the bottom of their feet first, sometimes in their fingertips, is because of this. You have this super long nerve, and the further that nerve is away from the heart, the more it's going to show up as a problem because it's getting a little less oxygen, blood flow, and nutrition compared to tissues that are closer to the heart. When you have this peripheral neuropathy, which is on the bottom of your feet, you have to realize what's going on. This is a blood sugar problem. Probably you have either prediabetes or diabetes. And normally the body has a very tight control over blood sugar. Like normal sugar in all of your blood should only be 1 teaspoon of sugar. And if you include all the starches, you're talking between 50 to 100 teaspoons of sugar, including the hidden sugar as well, that are going through your body. And so if normal blood sugar is 1 teaspoon, you can imagine what all that sugar is doing to the arteries and what your body's doing to remove that sugar. It's removing it like crazy with a vacuum cleaner called insulin. And so normal sugar is 1 teaspoon, but diabetes is only 2 teaspoons of sugar. And so what does all that mean? It means that the body doesn't like sugar in the blood, so it's going to remove it. But when you have 2 teaspoons of sugar, you have a problem with insulin. Either there's so much resistance with insulin, it can't really work anymore, or the pancreas is so exhausted, it's tired, it can't put out as much insulin. You no longer have the vacuum cleaner to suck it out, so the blood sugar goes high. And that is where you get all the artery problems, okay, that I'm going to be talking about. Especially it's going to show up in the bottom of your foot. So too much sugar is like really deadly for your circulation as well as the nerves. All right, let's go to number 2, ankle and foot edema. You know, when I'm traveling somewhere or I'm visiting somewhere, I always see someone wearing sandals or even shoes with the bottom of their foot just being like completely swollen, and I can see the bottom of their legs completely puffy, and I want to walk up to them, but I don't. Those people have some serious edema going on. If you were to press into the ankle, it would leave an indentation and it would be stuck there. That's called pitting edema. And that's not a little thing. That's a big problem. Or they'll take their socks off and they'll leave this serious indentation around the lower legs. Now, what's really bizarre is I had a version of this. I had pitting edema in the earlier part of my life, which is just wild to think that I had that. But this is an indication that the circulation is so bad that it's affected the kidney or the liver or the heart. And we're getting less oxygen to the bottom of the feet because we're not able to circulate this blood. It's just pooling there. And think about how much stress that puts on the heart, because this is how it works. We have the arterial system, all the arteries, that are pushing blood out to your extremities, to your fingers and your toes, okay? And then they get to the end of this long chain, and then they go through these capillaries, okay, tiny little blood vessels, and then they cross over into the venous system. And then the venous system is the return back up to the heart, but it goes through the lungs, gets reoxygenated, and then the cycle happens again. If at the end of this chain, the bottom of your foot, we have pooling of blood or fluid, that's a backup of the system. That's a situation where the heart is working extra hard to push through that inertia. And so number 2 is a really good indicator that you have a much deeper problem and you should not ignore it. You should do something about it. And from my viewpoint, I think you should do something more natural, because a lot of times what they'll do is they'll just put you on a blood thinner and then monitor it. Number 3, restless legs syndrome. What is that? That's a situation where your legs become very, very restless, usually at night. I had this condition. It was driving me crazy. I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and just have to pound my legs because they had so much energy in them. I could not relax. I couldn't sleep. Little did I know, the diet is responsible for this. If you consume way too much sugar and starch, I was doing a lot of ice cream, I was doing alcohol at the time, what happens is it really depletes certain vitamins, and it actually causes you to build up too much lactic acid, which creates kind of a cramping sensation and just a lack of circulation. Little did I know, there's a couple remedies for this. Number 1, change your diet. But the other thing is to take vitamin B1. B1 is a great solution. Also magnesium. Both of those in combination counter the effect of this high sugar diet. But you have to realize what created the deficiency in the first place with B1 and magnesium. It was the high refined carbohydrate diet. So both of those actions, change the diet and take this nutrition to resolve this. The problem with restless leg syndrome is that it keeps you up and it keeps you from sleeping, and that lack of sleeping shortens your lifespan. There's a massive connection with a lack of sleep, increasing your risk of heart attacks, strokes. It puts you at risk for diabetes because it increases cortisol. Other than that, you're totally fine with number 3. Let's talk about number 4, deep vein thrombosis. Thrombosis is like a blood clot. One of the dangers for this is a clot breaking off from your legs and going up into the lungs. That's not good. It can actually kill you. Over 90 to 95% of all heart attacks and strokes are a clot, more than this plaquing that builds up in the arteries. So this is something to pay attention to, and it's something that's really important because there's certain things in your body that will increase your risk of getting a clot. And I'm going to cover those in the second part of this. But 2 things, stress, and then we come back to this high carbohydrate diet again. Let's go to number 5, peripheral artery disease. This is artery disease that is not necessarily around the heart, it's in other places in your body too. And so we have atherosclerosis, hardening of the arteries that go beyond just like the coronary artery of your heart. And I'm going to get into a bit more on what to do about that, but the inside of your artery has this single layer cell called the endothelial layer of tissue. And it's a very key, important tissue to keep healthy. Because if you don't, it's going to create a constriction. You can create hardening of the arteries. You're going to create arteries that are more rigid. You're going to start creating inflammation. And then the body's going to come in with a Band-Aid and try to heal it with plaquing. That's the Band-Aid in there. But also the bigger issue is the clot formation, and that can actually break off, go into the brain, and create a stroke. So a lot more people die of clots. But with this situation, we're talking about more plaquing. Let's go to number 6, chronic venous insufficiency. When we're talking about the veins, we're talking about a pooling of blood in the veins. A lot of times this is associated with being sedentary, not able to get out there and exercise, because the thing about the veins is that you need muscular movement to get that blood back up to the heart. And so many people are not moving enough. And so the venous system is insufficient. It's stagnant blood that puts more pressure on the heart because the heart has to work harder to push this blood. And one interesting thing about this is that you'll see in the lower part of the legs and the ankles, this discoloration. It'd be different, like little spots. You'll see more of a browning effect. You'll see hair loss. You'll see thinner skin. You're going to definitely see pitting edema. But what's happening is we're getting a lack of oxygen in the lower part of the legs, and this can shorten your lifespan. Okay, and then number 7, we get sarcopenia. This is age-related muscle loss. It's one of the top predictors of mortality when you get older, just by losing muscle, because your muscle is a very important metabolic organ. You have a lot of mitochondria, that's the energy factories in there. It helps you burn off sugar. And so when you lose this muscle, you lose a very important buffer for living longer. And so this is a combination of course, aging, poor diet, lack of the cofactors, especially magnesium and vitamin D and zinc. but also having more of a sedentary lifestyle. But it's a combination of animal protein and exercise that helps you retain and maintain muscle. But I'm telling you, as you get older, you should learn from the mistakes of others and do whatever you can to maintain a consistent exercise program as you get older and have a goal of becoming more fit every single year because you're going up against aging. But what you want to do is you want to build up like a buffer or an extra reserve of fitness that will compensate for this aging process that everyone has to go through and hopefully maintain as much muscle as you possibly can as you age. Let's first talk about type 2 diabetes. That's relating to that peripheral neuropathy that I talked about, but it's also related to a lot of the other things that I talked about, because the more problems you have with your blood sugar, the more you're going to have problems with the inside of your arteries. And it's just bizarre to me that when you go to the doctor and you get diagnosed with diabetes, you are not instantly told to get on a low-carb diet. Instead, you're told we're going to manage your blood sugar, and we're even going to give you some glucose pills. If your blood sugar goes too low, you take these sugar pills to maintain it. So it's all about managing the downstream effects of this underlying root cause, which is basically eating too many carbs. I mean, I don't want to get sidetracked, but I will say that I don't know if this is intentional. It probably is. Everything in medicine is so siloed. It's so intentionally keeping the cause and effect relationship from being found out about or hidden. We silo doctors. They're highly specialized in this and this and this, but we're not connecting the dots between those silos. And the whole system is set up not to look at root causes. They don't look at lifestyle factors. They're managing the downstream effects. And even in research, right, everything is like, well, there's an association. They can't be too positive on this causes this, or they'll say, let's do a screening for early detection so then we can get you on medications earlier. There's really no prevention going on, unfortunately. But with type 2 diabetes, you must attempt to go on a low-carb diet and do intermittent fasting, 2 meals a day or even 1 meal a day. Why? Because there is hardcore research to show that you can reverse type 2 diabetes in 10 weeks if you go low carb. But that's only one thing you can improve. You can also improve fatty liver, you can improve your arterial system, you can improve the circulation of your legs, and definitely this peripheral neuropathy. 2 remedies that I recommend if you have peripheral neuropathy, which will actually help heal the nerves on the bottom of your foot or the fingertips. Benfotiamine is one. If you buy some benfotiamine, just take 4 pills spread out through the day. It works like a charm. And then alpha lipoic acid. Both of these are miraculous as far as helping you reverse peripheral neuropathy. Now, of course, you want to get to the root cause too. You want to fix the diet as well. Let's talk about the lymph system and the veins. So most people that are sedentary are going to get a pooling of fluid in their lower extremities and their legs because the heart doesn't necessarily push the venous supply. That happens with exercise or movement. But there's a really cool muscle. It's called the soleus. That's part of the calf muscle. This muscle is very, very unique. And there's a gentleman who actually came up with the soleus push-up. This is something that anyone can do, especially if they're sedentary or they do a lot of sitting at the computer. You could literally do a soleus push-up and create dramatic effects on your blood sugar and also on your circulation, because you can actually push the blood back up to the heart and take the stress off the heart. So it's like a second heart in your calf. What's unique about this muscle, the soleus, is it doesn't get tired. It has incredible endurance. It's very efficient. And I highly recommend you do it when you're sitting. I'm going to show you a video right now more on the person who actually developed this so you can understand how to do it.
I want you to picture your ankle joint. Sometimes this is where it's good to have a friend who might put their hand both on the top of the foot and on the front of the ankle, right where the ankle is straightening up. So if you picture the foot and the ankle coming together, what you're really doing is you're just straightening that joint. You're straightening it out. And so that's the motion that you should think about, okay? That'll help you avoid a lot of mistakes that we'll talk about later that I see some doctors putting videos up for their patients are doing incorrectly. All right. And so the next point is that as you do that, picture that you're lightly pressing against the ball of the foot, which is where the toes insert into the foot, that MTP joint. Just press lightly as you're straightening up that ankle. That's a good thing. You don't want to press too hard, otherwise you'll start to use your upper leg muscles. We want all of these muscles in the thigh completely relaxed. Then the next point is that you want to do a smooth dynamic motion. The rate can vary quite a bit. But what we really want to think about is move it such that you're going in a fluid motion like I'm doing here with my leg. It's just going up and down, up and down. Very smooth, fluid motion, okay? Don't jerk it, okay? You don't need to jerk and pause. Again, there's some points that we'll talk about later.
One last thing I want to mention about the muscles. Your muscles in a rest position only consume 15% of the energy. Your brain consumes 20% of the energy in a resting state. And so if you're more sedentary and you're eating a good amount of calories and you're thinking, oh, my muscles are going to burn these off, it's only going to just tap into a small percentage of that energy, well, 15%. This is why it's so important to exercise on a regular, consistent basis. Let's talk about sarcopenia for a second. This is a condition as you get older where the muscles start getting smaller and smaller and smaller and you get weaker and weaker. There's an interesting test. It's called a sitting rising test. And I'm going to show you a video on this in a second. But this is a test that's linked into longevity. And after you watch the video, I'm going to see if you can do this. I would recommend doing it on a surface that's not too slippery, but you're basically going to go down on a sitting position, and then you're going to try to stand up without using your arms. So let me just show you how to do that right now.
However, is there value to being more graceful on getting up off of the floor? Absolutely. It's an indicator of having good, just strength in general, but especially your core and hip strength. So here's what they recommend, and I'll just kind of show you is a starting point to get up off the floor without using your hands or coming up to your knees. Crisscross the legs, and can you just sit down first? How far can you sit down? Can you come up here? And then what they want you to be able to do is, can you cross under? And then maybe you give a little bit of a push or a little bit of a swing forward, but can you come up there without using your hands? So let's tackle that part first. If that's a complete chore for you, probably just practice just squats. How far can you take your squat down? Can you go into what they call an Asian squat, sit down real deep in through here? Maybe keep your hands and your knees connected. I like to push my hips back. This is a good, it looks weird, it looks kind of wild and crazy, but that's something nice to help with that hip mobility. But just doing squats here. Maybe you find boxes, maybe a little yoga block, maybe you find a book. Can you just practice sitting on something just a little bit elevated? Keep your chest up and then come up there. So these are ways that you can practice just that basic squat position. And you saw that I did what they call the pistol squat or the single leg squat. You just get a chair and just practice how far down can I go? And then come up if you want to do that single leg version of it right there. Next, I've got what are called hip switches. These help with some finesse, some agility, and some mobility in the hips. First, option one, just lean back. You want to get in through here, back and forth. They kind of look like a little windshield wiper movement in here. To get this, just think, kind of have your knees bent, and then just fall one way. Let both knees go this way here, and then let both knees go this way here. So you can use your hands for support behind you. You can try to excel past or progress past without using your hands. And then finally, maybe you can try to keep a little bit more upright. So don't bend through here, keep more upright. And then do it here. And then here, for anybody who, you know what, I don't necessarily need to be able to get up without using my hands, but maybe I could get to a knee and then come up. What you can do is keep that momentum going. We're here, and then come up here.
Now, if you haven't already tried this test, put it on pause and go ahead and try it right now. And then comment down below if you're able to do it or not. Let's talk about edema for a second. I talked about that being a kidney problem, a liver problem, or a heart problem. You basically have a situation where the blood is pooling in the lower part of your body, and you desperately need to push that back up with the Soleus push-up, as well as walking and exercising. But don't forget potassium. Potassium has a fantastic way of offsetting sodium and pushing fluid out. It's a natural diuretic, and we need like 4,700 milligrams of potassium every single day. Rarely does anyone get that much. It's a myth that potassium is bad for the kidneys. What is true is if you have late-stage kidney disease, you should get with your doctor before you start taking any magnesium. But if you don't have advanced kidney disease, taking more potassium, or even normal amounts of potassium, an electrolyte powder can actually push out a good amount of this fluid, but also go on low carb, do intermittent fasting, because carbohydrates are one big cause of this as well. So many people that go on a low carb ketogenic diet, what they'll notice within 2 days is they will drop 7 to 11 pounds. A lot of that's water weight, and that's the extra fluid that's on their body. That will go away. This is this is nitric oxide, okay? Nitric oxide is a compound that helps support the inside of the arteries, that endothelial layer. It helps to relax and vasodilate the arteries. And the question is, how do we increase it? Exercise. The sun, infrared, UV, increase nitric oxide. Nasal breathing, breathe through your nose, especially when you're sleeping, can increase nitric oxide. More vitamin D will help increase nitric oxide. It's probably one of the most potent things that you can do. If we're talking about food, the top food that will increase nitrates that will turn into nitric oxide is arugula. That's the type of salad that I consume, and also beets. I take an organic beet juice powder, and I actually put it in cacao, okay, raw chocolate powder, and I mix it in some raw milk a little bit about 2 hours after I drink coffee in the morning, because that cacao has polyphenols, okay, right here, that greatly increase nitric oxide, and I just combine it with the beets. It's a real interesting flavor. I like it, and if you put it in water, it's a little bit more nasty, and in raw milk, it seems to work out great. And I also put it in the blender to blend it up really nicely. But that's a super way to increase nitric oxide. Also, magnesium increases nitric oxide. The things that decrease nitric oxide: smoking, pollution, stress, being too sedentary, alcohol, refined carbs and sugar, PPIs, that's an antacid, and also mouthwash. All right, next thing, I already talked about this several times: regular, consistent exercise. Let's say, for example, you're a procrastinator, or let's say you don't have time to exercise. Micro exercises, very short exercise throughout the day, even if it's like 1 to 2 minutes, can actually be equivalent to a longer period of exercise. So just do as much as you can. If you have a choice between an elevator and walking the stairs, run up the stairs. If you're on the computer a lot, take frequent breaks and go do some type of short exercise. It's accumulative, but I want you to really start increasing the amount of motion you put in your body. And of course, pair that with a good amount of sleep, because we want to recover from the exercise. Now, if you are over the age of 50, I briefly mentioned sarcopenia. I have a much more thorough video on this. I think it would be very beneficial for you to watch. I put it up right here. Check it out right now.